solving all the problems of the world, from poverty to... we already have enough problems, and this is just too much. We can do, as Grâce Michel said, our little bits, our clinic here, our school there, but what about the wider problems? And I encourage you not to think like that, because business is part of society, and working with other members of society, I think we can have a voice. If we speak as business alone, if we speak as business collectively, we may have some impact, but frankly, business is not enormously trusted. And very often when business speaks, people look behind what we're saying to see what's in it for us and assume that being business people, there must be something in it for us. And of course, they're probably right. If we work with civil society and look at what our long-term objective is, to address some of the things that Grâce Michel was just talking about, which is what we want to do, but we cannot do it on our own, we find that other sectors of society, be they labor unions, civil society, actually have the same objective. You can at least start out from a point of agreement. You agree where we want to go. There's a certain amount of argument as to how we're going to get there, but at least we have agreement on where we're going. And then you can sit down, and you probably know in your own businesses, when you sit down and work together on a problem, you get to know each other, and you begin to see ways in which you can solve it. And that, I think, is the way in which business can work in relation to some of the wider goals. And that's extremely important, I think, when we look at the impact of something like corruption. Corruption is, unfortunately, a major element in many societies. And business, of course, is part of that process, because corruption has recipients and payers. It's got two sides. And there are all sorts of arguments. You know, I had to do it because otherwise, you know, everybody does it. We're all familiar with those arguments. And that's an issue that you can only solve if we address it collectively. There are some really very interesting processes of collective agreements in business to stamp out corruption on the business side. But if we work together with others, it gives us a more important voice to shout publicly when we see things going on that should not be going on. If we, one last thing I'd like to say is if we look at these wider issues, Grâce Michel spoke about capacity building and building human capital, and how this would pay out in the long run. And of course that's extremely true. But we also have a very short run problem, which she also spoke about, which is employment and lack of employment, and the lack of ability, for example, of women in communities to gain access to financing and to be able to start businesses and small businesses. And in my Anglo-American days, when you looked at all the problems we faced, of HIV/AIDS, of education, of training, of community relationships and so on, environment, I came to the conclusion that it basically boiled down in almost every area in a mining company to two things. One of them I know we're going to talk about later in the day, which is water. Anywhere you start a mine, water is an issue. There's either too much of it, too little of it, people are worried about what you're going to do to it, whether you pollute it and so on. It's a big problem, but it's a problem which has technical solutions. But the second major issue is actually creation of enterprises. And in many of our businesses, we started, and many of your businesses, we started in what I call the goats and sheep level of community activity, which is to help people, and this is extremely popular in Europe. Instead of sending Christmas cards, you can send a cow or give a goat or a sheep or something. And it's very important. But in the end, it is basically moving people from low-grade subsistence agriculture to slightly higher-grade subsistence agriculture. So I think in business we have to use our skills to go a bit further than that. And we need to look and see whether by using quite modest amounts of financing, supporting entrepreneurs, we can't create businesses which will then provide the sort of jobs that Grasa Machado was talking about. So I really commend that to you, because actually in business we know what's needed, and we have in our supply chains the capacity to help build local businesses. And it's amazing when you start doing it, what extraordinary developments you can have in your own supply chain and then outside your supply chain. And again, in my Anglo days, I would look at the increase that we had, and that's great pleasure. But then you look at it and think, why on earth didn't we do that before? You always have that in good ideas in business. You're very pleased that you had the idea, and then you think, why didn't I think of it before? So I commend that to you. Lastly, I've had 2 lastlies already. In the blueprint, you will see above the 3 circles I spoke about, a thing of leadership and engaging with stakeholders at high level. And you all know that these things will only happen if you have action at board level, and that boards are aware of what the issues are. And I really commend that you should take your boards of directors, don't keep them locked up in the boardroom, discussing things which may be very interesting, but can be also quite dull. Take them out and let them visit the operations. They will enjoy it because they get a breath of fresh air. They will learn something, and they will also, through their own activities, demonstrate their commitment to the kind of things that you're doing. And it's extremely instructive for them. And I can assure you, boards love it. So do that. The leadership of the chief executive is obviously extremely important. And I spoke quite a bit last night about how you actually ensure that people down the organization believe in what you were saying and actually believe you. But that's another whole topic. So I commend this blueprint to you. I look forward to our discussions in the day. I see that I'm slated to have another session at the end of the day. I haven't prepared anything for that, so I'm going to be taking notes and rely on you to give me something to talk about. Thank you.